today is the day. I have 2 singing lessons today. I have one with a woman called Claudia. She is a musical theatre singing teacher. So I'm headed to her first, and then a lesson with Meta, and she is a opera teacher. So feeling nervous is an understatement, but I'm sure it'll all be fine. Hello. Welcome to the whole reason I'm actually making these vlogs. Lesson breakdown segment of my trip. So I thought I would go through my notes and tell you a bit about what I learned in my first lessons. Obviously, because they are my first lessons, it was a lot of like introductory stuff. Let's start with Claudia. She is a opera singer, but also teaches classical and musical theatre. So having someone that can apply classical and operatic techniques into musical theatre repertoire. So with her, I did the song Someone Like You from Jekyll and Hyde, because one thing she was pointing out that's a thing with my voice is that I can lose energy and support to the ends of my phrases, which can also make my vibrato get a bit wide. I might insert a moment here of her explaining the technical side of vibrato, which I thought was really interesting.
Do our vibrato needs to be within a quarter tone or less than a quarter tone of the note that we're singing. You know, like a semitone? Yeah. This is a semitone. They're semitones. So a quarter tone is a quarter of that. So da da da, that's a quarter tone. And so when we do our vibrato, we want to keep the kind of to and from of the vibrato as near to our note as possible, which you do. But sometimes if we don't support the sound properly, it can become, it goes between, rather than F and a quarter tone, it might go F into a semitone. And then if it gets really bad, and you almost end up trilling, doing like a trill rather than a vibrato, and it just doesn't sound great.
So yeah, reminding me to like support my breath right to the end of the phrase, which is interesting because that's also something that Meta brought up. So I'm really glad that that's something I can clock into now. It was reminding me to like loosen my jaw on the belt stuff, which seems like common sense, but it like super helped me get up there. And so that was a good point. Also, she told me that she was Christine Daae on the West End. And then she said, you should bring in some Fan of the Opera stuff so we can work on it. In opera, the same way that in musical theatre we get twang and we say that we feel it like here, or some people say like in your mask. In opera, they think about, if you want that more forward sound like you get from using twang, is imagining it coming from between your eyebrows. In musical theatre, it's a different position of larynx, whereas you want your larynx lower in opera, and so imagining it coming from this place helps keep your larynx lower, whereas in musical theatre we have it come from here, which makes our larynx a bit higher. So but overall our like vibe for that lesson was focusing on applying that sort of more classical style, like a lower larynx position for a more MT song, and finding which moments needed that belt, whereas which moments needed that more classical approach, which is why I think Someone Like You is a good song option for that. My second lesson was with Meta Powell, and she is a straight opera singer and opera teacher. She sent me a aria to learn before I arrived, but we didn't even get into the aria the first lesson. She did actually say that, interestingly, in her opinion, that there's a lack of classically trained MT singers on the West End at the moment. So it does show how important it is to have that classical side as well to your training if you can. Went through the most of the lesson doing an U to E vowel transition, but the vowel shapes are the operatic style, so more of the Italian. So the U rather than an U, more of an owl, so like a hoo hoo, that kind of a shape. So we did an going into an E. I personally have a habit of jutting my jaw, which is like moving it forward, especially when I do classical, but she picked up on that immediately. So a lot of it was working on me relaxing the jaw. She said, imagine there's a weight on your back molars to keep it nice and drawn down. When we were doing our slides, she wanted me to keep the support sustained throughout. And so she wanted me to imagine like a kite, that it's flying in the air. And if you pull down on it too much, it'll come down. but if you let go, it'll fly away. So it's keeping that correct amount of support so that it just brings the kite up. She also pointed out a similar thing about my vibrato that Claudia did, in that if I lack the support in my vibrato, it can get like trilly, which really resonated with me because I felt, especially when I go into like my high soprano stuff, it can get quite trilly and uncontrolled. And so she told me as an exercise to easing into the vibrato. I've got 2 clips on here to show you the difference between the two, and it's really clear. You can hear how much more control I have over the vibrato in the second clip. When you do the trillier vibrato, it means that your larynx has lost control of itself. Whereas if you support it all the way up and ease into the vibrato, it makes your larynx stable. She also noticed that my jaw jutting was literally affecting the quality of my vocal fold closure. It also showed me that if you have tongue tension in the phrase and then moving your tongue like that while you're still singing and while you're doing vibrato, how easily you can move your tongue from left to right can show how, you know, loose that tongue is. That's kind of like the overview of stuff we learned in that session.